The morning I decided to test F's love, the sky above Lagos was pale and quiet, like it, too, was holding its breath. I stood before the mirror in my studio apartment, wiping off my foundation until my reflection looked like a stranger's. Beneath the flawless lashes and perfect brows was a face I had not seen in years, mine, without performance. People said I was lucky. F was every woman's fantasy, polished, well-spoken, dangerously charming. We looked like the kind of couple Lagos gossip blogs would call goals. But lately, I'd begun to notice something unsettling. The more flawless I became, the colder he grew. Every compliment was measured, every hug calculated. Once, I asked him if he still loved me, and he said, "You know I can't afford not to." That line haunted me more than silence. It started as a joke with my assistant, Bola. "Maybe he only loves the version of you on Instagram," she said. I laughed, then stopped. Because, deep down, I feared she was right. So we built the plan together. A month-long experiment that would answer a question I was too afraid to ask aloud. Would he love me if I were ordinary? Bola helped me create Kemi, a shy, soft-spoken cleaner. She found an agency to hire me under that name and even forged the ID card. We dyed my hair jet black, added freckles with an eyebrow pencil, and I wore secondhand clothes from Yaba Market. By the time we finished, Tamar the designer was gone. Kemi the timid cleaner had been born. My first morning at F's company felt like stepping into another world. The marble floors I once walked across in heels now echoed beneath rubber slippers. I kept my head bowed as I mopped near his office. When he walked past, his cologne brushed the air like memory. My pulse betrayed me. He didn't look twice. I told myself that was good. By noon, he called for coffee. The receptionist pointed to me. My hands shook as I served him, avoiding his eyes. But when our fingers brushed, he smiled. "You're new?" he asked. His tone was lighter than the one he used with me. I nodded, whispering, "Yes, sir." He looked at me a moment longer than necessary, then said, "You remind me of someone." That night, I lay on my bed replaying those words until they became music and warning at once. It wasn't the smile that scared me, it was how easy it came, how free. F had never smiled at Tamar like that. By the end of the week, he'd offered Kemi lunch, joked about the stress of Lagos traffic, even told her how lonely he sometimes felt despite being engaged to perfection. I should have felt proud that my disguise worked. Instead, I felt a sharp twist of jealousy at myself, because the man I loved was finally opening his heart. Just not to me. The days that followed felt like watching my own relationship through a stranger's eyes. Every morning I arrived before dawn, tied my scarf low, and hid the woman F once kissed goodnight behind a plain uniform that smelled of detergent and dust. The first few hours were always safe until he arrived. F carried his world with him, that quiet authority, that scent of confidence and cologne. People straightened when he walked past, but with me, he was different. Softer. Curious. As Kemi, I was invisible enough for him to relax, and that was when I saw who he really was. One afternoon, I found him sitting alone in the staff canteen, sleeves rolled up, eating rice from a plastic plate. For a moment, I almost walked away, afraid my disguise might falter. But he looked up and smiled. "You again," he said. "Sit, nah. Nobody will bite." I hesitated, then joined him. We ate in silence until he laughed quietly. "Funny, you know," he said. "I feel like I can breathe when you're around. No judgment, no pretending. Just peace." Those words sliced through me like glass. All I ever wanted was to be that peace. Yet he had to lose Tamar to find it. He started asking about my life. Where I lived, what I dreamed of, who I loved. I made up stories, an ailing mother in Ibadan, a younger brother in school. Lies felt safer than truth. Still, the way he listened made them sound real. Sometimes he'd talk about his fiancé, the beautiful but complicated woman who didn't know how to slow down. He said she was perfect for the world, but exhausting to love. I bit my tongue till it bled. By the end of the week, the office whispered about the boss who spent his breaks with a cleaner. Bola warned me, This game is getting dangerous. But I couldn't stop. It was like watching a movie where the villain was me. Friday evening, he walked me to the gate. "Do you believe people can fall in love twice?" he asked suddenly. My throat tightened. "I think we fall for who listens," I replied. He smiled and said, "Then maybe I've been deaf for too long." That night, sleep refused to come. I stared at the ceiling, replaying his voice, his kindness, the way his eyes softened whenever they found mine. I used to pray for that version of him, the one who could laugh without calculating his next sentence. Now he existed, but not for Tamar. I looked at my reflection in the cracked mirror of my small apartment, the fake freckles fading, the wig slipping. Somewhere between truth and disguise, I had lost the map back to myself. F had fallen for Kemi, the version of me that didn't exist. And the terrifying part was I understood why. Every secret has a heartbeat, and mine was getting louder. Each day I lived as Kemi, I could feel Tamar fading like perfume left open too long. F's laughter followed me everywhere, light, careless, dangerously sincere. He laughed at my fake clumsiness, praised my humility, called me a fresh breath in a pretentious world. I should have been proud the act was working. Instead, it felt like betrayal performed in front of God. At first, I told myself it was harmless. But the evening I watched him walk Kemi to the gate, holding an umbrella over her head as the rain poured, something snapped. The same man who once complained that traffic was too stressful to pick me up after work now stood in puddles for a woman who didn't exist. Back home, I sat in front of the mirror, half made up as Tamar, half still Kemi. The reflection mocked me. Two faces, one man, and no peace. Bola's call cut through my thoughts. "You're losing control," she said. "I'm getting answers," I replied. "No, you're losing yourself." The next day, I arrived as Tamar, perfectly dressed. F barely noticed. He glanced up from his laptop, muttered a distracted "hey," and continued typing. My perfume filled the room, but he didn't inhale. His eyes were empty. "What happened to us, F?" I asked quietly. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You happened, Tamar. The brand, the perfection, the constant need to prove something. I miss peace." "And you find peace where?" His silence answered before his mouth did. Later, as Kemi, I entered his office to clean. He looked up and smiled in a way that burned. "You again," he teased. "If the world had more people like you, maybe we'd all sleep better." I forced a shy smile. "Maybe the world doesn't like simple people." "Then the world's foolish," he said. When he touched my wrist to help lift a bucket, I felt my pulse betray me. The warmth was too familiar, too dangerous. I pulled back quickly. "Sorry, sir." He chuckled. "Stop calling me sir. It makes me feel old." That night, he texted Tamar, "I think we need space." He texted Kemi, "Can I call you?" I stared at the two messages glowing on my screen like opposing suns. I could choose which woman to be, but either choice would destroy something. When his call came through, I answered without words. I let him talk, his voice low, unguarded. "I don't know why I feel like I've known you forever," he said. "It's like you see me, Kemi. Really see me." Tears slid down my cheeks, silent and bitter. Because I did see him. Every scar, every lie, every tenderness he tried to hide. After the call ended, I sat in darkness, heart split between illusion and truth. The man I loved was falling deeper into a story I wrote, and I was the villain trapped in her own script. The next morning, Tamar didn't show up at work. Only Kemi did. And when F smiled in relief, I knew the battle was lost. I used to believe heartbreak was loud, that it came with screaming, broken plates, maybe thunder. But mine arrived quietly, the way dusk seeps into daylight without asking permission. A week had passed since F stopped replying to Tamar's messages. Yet he called Kemi every other night. His voice had changed, softer, slower, honest in a way I never thought possible. Sometimes he talked about his childhood, about sleeping on a mat with his brothers, about how money made him feel more trapped than free. And I listened, both as the woman he was engaged to and the stranger he was falling for. One evening, Bola came to my apartment unannounced. She stood at the door, arms folded, face heavy with disappointment. Tamar, this is madness. You're building your own heartbreak. I just need to know how far he'll go, I whispered. She exhaled sharply. What if he goes all the way? I didn't answer, because deep down, I feared that's exactly what I wanted, for him to reveal himself completely. The next day, I arrived early at the office as Kemi. My heart raced when I found him waiting by the reception, hands in pockets, smile nervous. Come with me, he said. We walked in silence through the compound until we reached a small park behind the building, a forgotten place where flowers grew wild and nobody came. He turned to me, eyes unsteady. Kemi, I don't know what this is, he began, but I feel alive again when I'm around you. You don't want anything from me. You just listen. I tried to speak, but the lump in my throat silenced me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a thin silver ring. Not luxury, just sincerity. I know I'm engaged, but it doesn't feel real anymore. This does. Time stopped. Wind moved through the trees, brushing my scarf. Somewhere inside me, Tamar screamed. I forced a trembling laugh. Sir, please don't joke like that. I'm not joking, he said. I want you. You're the only peace I know. Tears filled my eyes. I turned away so he wouldn't see the storm behind them. Everything about that moment was wrong, yet heartbreakingly beautiful. I wanted to tell him the truth, to say, you already have me, but fear held me hostage. He slid the ring into my palm. Think about it, he whispered. That night, Bola burst into my room. He proposed, didn't he? I nodded numbly. What now? She asked. I end it, I said. Tomorrow. But tomorrow never came the way I planned. The following morning, as I walked through the hallway, a junior staff member stopped me. Madam Tamar. Sorry, Kemi. Wait, which one are you? My blood froze. He'd overheard me talking to Bola on the phone the night before. Within hours, the office buzzed with whispers. The new cleaner looks exactly like the boss's fiancé. Is it a coincidence? Maybe she's a twin. I locked myself in the cleaning room, heart thundering. My phone rang. Tamar, his voice came, low and urgent. We need to talk. For the first time in weeks, he sounded like a man who'd seen a ghost. Maybe he finally had. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't come like thunder. It came dressed in applause. It was the company's end-of-quarter celebration, the kind of event where photographers clicked endlessly and everyone smelled of ambition. I arrived as Tamar, sequin dress, red lipstick, confidence stitched to my skin. For the first time in weeks, I wanted to remember who I was before I became Kemi. The ballroom shimmered with laughter and glass. Stood near the stage, sharp in his black tuxedo, but something in his eyes was unsettled. Our gaze met, and the air between us tightened. He hadn't called again since that day in the park. I assumed guilt had built its wall. Then the host announced the Employee of the Month. A name echoed through the hall, Kemi Adewale. For a second, I forgot to breathe. Whispers rippled. I froze in place. Someone pushed me forward, assuming I'd go congratulate her. But there was no her. I was both the fiancé and the cleaner. An illusion had just been summoned to life. Bola's hand squeezed my wrist. End it tonight, she hissed. Stepped up to the microphone, confusion written across his face. Where is Kemi? He asked lightly, scanning the crowd. She deserves this moment. The hall fell silent. All eyes shifted between me and the stage. I walked forward, slowly, every step echoing like confession. The cameras clicked. F's brows furrowed as I stopped before him. What are you doing? He murmured. I smiled sadly, being honest. Then, in front of everyone, I untied the headscarf that had once hidden me. The hall gasped as I slipped on the thick-rimmed glasses from my bag, mimicking the woman he'd fallen for. I am Kemi, I said softly. The cleaner.
The peace. The lie.
He staggered backward, disbelief darkening his face.
No.
You're not, you can't be. I was. I interrupted, voice trembling. You said you loved simplicity, so I gave you mine. You said you missed peace, so I became silence. And you fell in love with a version of me that could never survive outside your fantasy. The room dissolved into whispers and flashes. F's jaw clenched. You tricked me, he said. No, I replied. I showed you what truth looks like without makeup. He looked at me, eyes raw, voice shaking. Then here's my truth, Tamar. I loved her more. I loved Kemi because she didn't perform love. She just lived it. The applause from the audience was awkward, unsure if this was performance or heartbreak. But it didn't matter. The stage lights blurred, and I walked off before tears betrayed me. In the hallway, Bola caught up. Are you okay? I smiled faintly.
No.
But at least now he is. When I reached home that night, I took off the wig, the makeup, and the name. My reflection stared back, exhausted but real. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to pretend. Some truths don't break you. They set you free, piece by painful piece. Healing does not announce itself. It begins quietly, in the small spaces life leaves behind after everything has fallen apart. For me, healing began with silence. Not the comforting kind. No, this one was sharp and echoing, the type that forced you to sit with yourself and answer questions you once ran from. In the weeks after the revelation, Lagos moved on, but I remained frozen inside a story I created with my own hands. Articles were written. Gossip pages had a field day. Some called me brilliant, others called me manipulative. A few said I deserved to be abandoned. But the loudest noise came from inside me, the voice that kept asking if I had ruined the only real love I ever had. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped dressing up. The mirror became a stranger, one who had watched me pretend, then watched me shatter. Bola came often, knocking with food and concern. One night, she found me sitting on the floor surrounded by sketches and broken ideas. Tamar, you need to forgive yourself, she whispered. Forgiveness requires understanding, I replied. And I don't even understand myself yet. Meanwhile, F vanished from the city. Word reached me that he returned to Ibadan, rented a small apartment behind a printing press, and worked quietly, refusing interviews. They said he walked differently, slower, heavier, like a man learning how to breathe again. Hearing that hurt more than anger ever could. Months passed. Slowly, painfully, life nudged me back into motion. I rented a small workspace in Yaba and poured myself into something new, a design studio meant for women like me, women rebuilding themselves from pieces. I called it Bare Walls because healing often begins with stripping everything down to the truth. The studio became therapy. Every paint stroke, every client, every empty room waiting for color reminded me that broken things could be beautiful again. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit alone in the studio and replay the moment he told me he loved peace more than perfection. And each time, I understood him a little better. But the wound never fully closed. Not until that evening. I went back to my old company to collect a sketchbook I left behind during the scandal. The building felt smaller, like time had squeezed the air out of it. I walked through the hallway where Kemi was born and died. As I reached for the exit, the new cleaner called out, "Auntie, sorry, someone drops this every Friday." He held out a small brown envelope. "It's always addressed to Kemi. I've been keeping them." My heart stumbled. With shaky fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, faintly smelling of pine. The scent F always wore. The handwriting was unmistakable. "If Kemi ever returns, tell her I'm still waiting.
F."
I sank onto the cold tiles, clutching the note as tears blurred the ink. For months, I had convinced myself that he hated me. But this note, this quiet, fragile confession, it held a different kind of love. A wounded love. A waiting love. A love unsure of its place in the world. I don't know how long I stayed on that floor. Long enough for the sunset to fade. Long enough for the building to empty. Long enough for my heart to feel something warm again. When I finally stood up, I felt lighter, not healed, but open. Maybe Kemi would never return. But Tamar had learned something valuable. Love cannot survive inside a performance. And peace is not found in perfection, but in presence. As I stepped outside, the evening breeze lifted my hair, carrying distant sounds of danfos, honking cars, and city chaos that suddenly felt soothing. I whispered into the twilight. Maybe someday, when we are no longer illusions to each other, we'll meet again. And for the first time since everything collapsed, I believed it.